Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. Before we jump into today's episode, which I believe is episode 94 or 95, I could be wrong here. I want you to listen to this.
Because it's hard. Down 80% new shows in 2020. Every time there's like a pop culture boom, a new app, a new concept, a new platform, podcast, YouTube, social media, blogs back in the day, websites, iPhone apps, NFT projects, rapper being an athlete. These were not things that people thought about as major professions in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. And then everybody sees it and everyone tries. A successful podcast is hard. It doesn't mean, and to me, everybody who watches this should thrive and do 10 episodes of a podcast because God forbid, aka God willing, you've got it like that. It's an amazingly fun career and lucrative, and you get to talk about what you want. But the reason things go down after they get a little mature is because it's hard. People give up 20 times posting on social, on TikTok or Instagram, and like, oh, I didn't go viral. It's just hard on me.
It's hard. Running a business is hard. All of this stuff is hard, and people give up so fast. I am incredibly proud that we are edging in on our 100th podcast. That's incredible. So if you've listened to every single one of those podcasts, thank you so much for being here and for listening. Every week I look at the number of downloads that we've had, and I know downloads is just one metric. It's not, encompassing of how many people listen all over the place, but I just want to say thank you because it is hard work showing up. I'm recording this podcast on Monday, January the 23rd. And the truth is I had a guest episode that I was supposed to record last week, which would air next Monday, the 30th, and my guest had to cancel at the last minute. Something came up. So we've rescheduled that recording, but that meant that I needed to jump in the seat and I needed to fill an episode for my team so that they're not behind, because it takes a week to produce these podcasts. By the time you add the bumpers and you write the show notes and you get everything set up the way it is, it's not a fast turnaround. It's hard work. So I wanted to share that audio from Gary Vaynerchuk, which I saw on Instagram, because the headline on that particular article is that new podcasts are down by 20% in 2022 compared to where they were in 2020. And that's because people can't stay in the hard. And that is a perfect segue into today's episode, which is really 4 books that I've read about leadership that I think are fantastic, and I would encourage you to read as well. Here's what I want you to know. Most people who are entrepreneurs don't think of themselves as leaders, but the truth is you are a leader. You are leading your clients, you are leading your team, and you are leading yourself. And so the more you know and understand about leadership, the more successful you will be. You can't scale your business by yourself. And I don't care if you have independent contractors, freelancers, part-time employees, 1 employee, 100 employees. It all requires some semblance of leadership in order for it to work. So I have 4 books that I have read over my career as a leader. And I got to tell you again, I've been leading teams since 1989. That's they're almost 35 years of leading teams, and I still don't have my act together every single day. I still fall into old patterns and habits. And, sometimes I'm a really tough leader and sometimes I let too much go. And so I'm constantly working on my leadership skills, and you should be too. So the first book that was really, really pivotal in my life, and I read this book probably 4 times when I was in my corporate life, is Primal Leadership by Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman wrote Emotional Intelligence. And what I love about Primal Leadership is this book really unpacks all the different styles of leadership. And it talks about when to apply each style. So I'm going to give you an example. One style is being commanding. And when somebody is commanding, they're direct and they have high expectations, and it's kind of relentless. Like, commanding works in some situations, but if you're commanding all the time, you can be perceived as a tyrant, or you can be perceived as somebody who's difficult to work for. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for command in leadership. So this book will walk you through different styles of leadership. And the way that I walked away from this book was, leadership is like having a tool belt with different tools, and you need to understand what tool to employ at what time. So let's think about a paramilitary organization. Somebody goes to war, you need somebody who is in command. You don't need somebody who's an affiliative leader who is going to be all, touchy-feely, nurturing, you're okay, and trying to build your self-esteem. That's not going to work in that particular situation. So when you understand that there are many different styles of leadership, and they're not all good and they're not all bad, and there's good and bad to all of them if they are deployed at the wrong time or at the right time, all of a sudden you start to recognize as a leader what you can do, when you can do it, and how you can do it to get the most out of your team. So if leadership is this kind of thing, this word that you don't really understand, like, it's great, everybody says be a great leader, but what the heck does that mean? If you want to understand the different styles of leadership and how those styles are deployed, and the benefits and the downsides of those different styles, and how leadership affects us in the brain, how our brain will trigger a reaction to different styles of leadership, I highly, highly recommend you read Primal Leadership. Emotional Intelligence is a great book too. And I think that all good leaders have a certain degree of emotional intelligence. But if you just really want to understand stylistically the different types of leadership, so that you understand that just because you got a little bossy one day and commanded people doesn't mean you're a bad leader. There is a time and place to use that particular style. And yes, if you overuse it in the wrong situations, you're going to have turnover on your team all the time. Great book, different styles, going to help you really understand how to be an effective leader and to choose the right style for the right situation. The next book I'm going to recommend is a book called Multipliers. And, I should be more prepared here. I should have the book up in front of me. Liz Weissman, I think, wrote Multipliers. Multipliers is a book that I read with my leadership team last year. And what I love about Multipliers is it really talks about, are you a multiplier or a diminisher? And so in leadership, you can have a multiplying effect on people, meaning that you can get more out of them than what you probably think you can, or you can be a diminisher. And when you are a diminisher, you're really going to see diminishing returns. You're not going to get the best out of your people. This book talks about styles as well and different approaches to leadership. And there's an exercise in the book where you can actually look at the different things that you may be doing as a leader that are not helpful to your team. And so when I went through this book, I got my team to give me feedback on the things that I was doing that were not helpful to them. And it reminded me of what Jackie Fu, my colleague and former boss and mentor, once said to me: what makes you good makes you bad. And so one of the things that makes me good is I have a high sense of urgency and I'm very, very responsive. But for my team, what my high sense of urgency and responsiveness says is, you don't trust me to get to this and respond and take care of it. So I've had to learn to step back and let other people step in and do things and not be so fast to respond to certain things, to give my team the opportunity to shine. And so this book will teach you things that you may be doing inadvertently that are diminishing to your team members that you don't even realize you're doing. It'll also teach you about the art of inquiry and how, when you ask more questions versus give more answers, you empower your team to be able to figure things out on their own, and you empower them to feel empowered. They feel good about the work they're doing. They feel like you trust them. They feel like they are contributing. It's a really big book and it's a really valuable read. And if you're listening to this podcast and you care about leadership, and or if you have a leadership team, I highly recommend you read this book with your team. We read this book over the course of a few months, and what we did is every single week we would come back to the book and we would have pages assigned to us. Sometimes it was a chapter, sometimes it was half a chapter, and we would talk through what we learned, and then we would build skill practice in based on the learning. It's a fantastic book. One of the things that someone on my team said at that time, though, that was really eye-opening to me, they said, we don't have any diminishers on our team, or we don't have any intentional diminishers on our team. But sometimes we have clients that behave like diminishers. And what should we do about them? And I thought that was a really, really interesting question. It really made me think differently about how you let your clients treat your employees, because sometimes you just chalk it up to somebody's having a bad day, or they're the client's always right, or yeah, we made a mistake, I can understand why that person's upset. You can rationalize client behavior, especially high paying client behavior, all day long. But when you read this book and you understand the multiplying or the diminishing effect your clients can have on your team, you start to think about what you tolerate and accept a little bit differently. And from a leadership perspective, you want to remember your team is always watching you. Your team is watching what you tolerate and what you accept. And when you don't, go to bat for them. So highly, highly recommend Multipliers. The third book on my list is The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. Okay, you can read this book on your lunch break. It is this tiny, tiny book. And I want you to stop and ask yourself for a moment, as a leader, do you feel like sometimes you're doing other people's jobs? I've been there, done that, and sometimes it still happens to me and I hate it. Do you feel like you hire people to do a certain thing and they're not able to do it the way you want? And so you end up having to do half their work, 3/4 of their work. You need to shepherd their work. You need to follow up on their work. Well, chances are you have all of their monkeys hanging onto your back. This book will teach you how to delegate and empower other people to perform at high levels so that you do not have to do their work for them. I highly recommend reading this book if you are known for taking on work that is not yours to do. Most leaders go through this. They go through this for a few reasons. One, they're perfectionists, so they want things done a certain way. Two, they have poor time management skills. And so they don't actually give their team enough lead time to do the work well. And therefore they end up taking it at the last minute so that they can bring it to the end zone, because their team didn't have enough. They didn't build in enough time to coach and develop their team to let their team member take it to the end zone. And so this book will teach you how to give work back to people in a way that is nice, that actually helps you to develop your team members so that they can do great work. Highly recommend this book, especially if you are new to leadership. It's a great book. The 1 Minute Manager, period, is a great book. But The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey is a book that I have bought dozens of times and given to countless leaders to help them understand how to delegate effectively and how to not fall into the trap of taking on everybody else's responsibilities. The last book that I'm going to refer here is a book called Whale Done. And I think this book is written by Ken Blanchard. And Whale Done is a book about how they train the killer whales at SeaWorld. Now, set aside your bias as to whether there should be killer whales at SeaWorld or not for a moment, because I know that a lot of people don't believe that it should be that way, and that's fine. I can appreciate those views. But the truth is, you don't get into a pool with a killer whale and smack it on the head and boss it around and tell it what to do, because you'd be putting your life at risk. This book is about how to use praise, how to use positive affirmations, how to actually train people to get the results you want as a leader without being the bad guy. And the metaphor is a beautiful metaphor, and there's lots of really good stuff in there about people doing good work. I think sometimes one of the things that leaders fall into the habit of doing is not acknowledging good work because they expect it. And I want to give you a little tip, something that you can do. Have a little notepad on your desk, and whenever you notice somebody doing a good job, jot it down on your notepad. And at the end of each week, take a moment and write a handwritten card and send it to somebody and tell them, Hey, well done. You did a great job this week. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate that you were on time with this. I appreciate how quickly you responded. We don't dole out enough praise and recognition. And it's not just about, hey, good job. It's about giving people specific feedback and specific examples of what they did and why it was valuable to your organization. I do my very best to have an acknowledgement list at the end of every week where I take a few moments and write out some cards and stick them in the mail. When I go to the post office, I buy stamps in the hundreds because I know that it's my goal to send out that many cards in a given year, if not more than that. My goal is actually 5 a week. I'm not perfect at it. Some weeks I fall off. I've fallen off every week this year so far. And I share that with you. I have my list, but I have been traveling so much this month that I have not been good at doing it, but it doesn't mean that it's not a habit that I'm going to get back into. So Well Done will teach you the power of positive reinforcement and how using positive reinforcement can help you to build a stellar team that knows what you want them to do. You know, one of the things I remember when I hired my executive assistant, one of the things that I used to do is I used to tell her when things were helpful and when things were not helpful. And I used that language very deliberately because I wanted her to do more of what was helpful. And when something wasn't helpful, I would tell her what would have been helpful. This wasn't helpful. What would have been helpful is if you had added this or if you had done this. And I tried really hard to do more of what was helpful, so that she knew what was helpful, and not only that it was helpful, but why it was helpful. For the most part, I would say 99% of your people want to do a great job. But if you don't tell them what is helpful and why, you don't tell them what they did well and why that matters, then how can they replicate the good for you? They can't because they don't know. And so leadership often gets a bad rap because as leaders, we're always stepping into the things that people should have done, could have done better. We're always stepping in to save the day instead of stepping back and looking at the big picture to see what people are doing well and reinforcing those things. So if you want to be a good leader at the end of the day, it's a lot of work and it's worth it. I mean, when I have past employees who worked for me over a decade ago, who still stay in touch with me, who still tell me that they count me as one of the, most pivotal mentors that they've had in their life, then I know that I've done a good job in my leadership. I know that I'm not a perfect leader. None of us are, but there's a lot. It's really rewarding when you get to be my age, like I'm in my 50s now, and I've been leading since I was 19. There are people that I led in my 20s that I am still connected to. And so it feels really good when you can build those relationships and know that you made a positive impact on somebody's career development as a leader. So double down, do the work, listen to the audiobooks, listen to the leadership podcasts, read the books, practice the skill of being a better leader. It will pay back dividends. And just like I shared at the beginning of this podcast, producing a podcast every week is hard. Being a great leader every day is hard too. But that doesn't mean that you should give up on it. If you're trying to build something that is of value, it's worth it. It's worth investing in yourself and it's worth investing in your people. Thanks for listening to this episode of She Talks Business. And hey, if you've listened to the end, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to know what leadership book was the most impactful in your life. Bye for now, and we'll see you next time.